the Galle dialogue, the changes that are necessary, and where the focus should be. The general discussion so far revealed that it's good that we focus in the Indian Ocean and the surrounding areas. I think we would like to have the views of you all who are participating as to the area of focus, general focus of the Galle dialogue. In addition, we have Dr. Ram Mahadeva here, who's been the pioneer of the Indian Ocean Conference to bring attention to the Indian Ocean. So we have to discuss with the India Foundation how we can organize the separate discussions as a part of a collaboration and not as a part of competition. There's so much that can be discussed here. Today, discussing the new emerging order in the Indian Ocean. I thought of asking the question, especially after listening to Dr. Mahadeva, what is the Indian Ocean and what is its relation to Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific and the BRI? Asia-Pacific is a construct. It began with the US construct of the hub and spoke system to consolidate its power after World War II in the Pacific, and an economic construct, Asia-Pacific, which was joined by China and others. So it is basically economic construct. What is the BRI? It's also seen by some as a security construct, but most of us see it as economic and a trade construct, a China-centric trade construct, which builds on its historical trading relations with Europe and with Africa. Then what is Indo-Pacific? That's the latest security construct. I need not tell you what it is. You all know. What is the Indian Ocean? It's not a construct. It's a civilization. So that is the difference. These constructs take place and they can move out. They have a European construct of the Soviet bloc, the Western bloc. Now that has all disappeared. You've got European Union and you've got the Ukraine war. So these are constructs that are there for a time being and then disappear. Their constructs are on security and on economics. But this is a civilization. I mean, the world civilization has come out of this. From the Mohenjo-daros to the pharaohs to what we have today is all a part of a civilization. It's a civilization from which we have seen some of the world's best known religions. The birth of Hinduism, the birth of Buddhism, birth of Sikhism, Jainism, and even Islam came from the Arabian Peninsula. So all these have dominated our thinking. The cultures that have gone through, superimposed by the British Empire. It's a civilization that has existed. We have traded with each other, we have fought with each other, we have cultural links with each other. That civilization cannot be destroyed. You cannot wipe it out. What is the British Commonwealth? The majority of the members are from this area. Those are links that go on. So you have a civilization and you have the three different constructs. So how do we fit into these constructs? What do we do? So as a civilization, as a country, what else is the Indian Ocean? Indian Ocean is also a political entity, which Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific and BRI aren't. It's from here many civilizations came. The collapse of the British Empire and the Western empires were in the Indian Ocean. It's from here that the Colombo Conference, Colombo Powers Conference and the Bandung Conference brought out the Afro-Asianism. From here that non-alignment came. It's from here the concept of the South came. So we are basically a political organ. We are the ones that gave recognition to the non-European sectors of the world as colonialism was collapsing. Within it was the Indian Ocean. Well, you have the Indian Ocean Zone of Peace Resolution, which all of us have accepted, and you have late President Nelson Mandela's concept of the Indian Ocean for socio-economic and other peaceful uses, and you have the Jakarta Concord. So we've got these definitions of the Indian Ocean. So politically, we are different from the Asia Pacific or the other constructs. We are political. We think politically. We all have different views on the Ukraine war, but if you look at all the countries that didn't want to get involved, the vast majority are from around the Indian Ocean. It goes in every direction. So you see that there is a political thinking here, which must be taken in its context and not outside that. It's not merely one of security planners. Do I move from this area to that, to the Indian Ocean? What do the islands think? What does Seychelles think? It's very small, but very important. What does Maldives think? How are they going to react? So these are considerations which are not taken into effect by many of the security planners. But these are things that matter. In the end, it will matter. So that's one. Secondly, the economic aspects. The developments that has taken place in East Asia and Asia Pacific, as Dr. Mahadeva says, will now move into the Indian Ocean, to India, to Bangladesh. Similarly, on the other hand, you find the Gulf states. So you'll find two big economic centers coming up in the Indian Ocean immediately, followed by Africa. By 2050, Africa is going to be booming, and those who haven't should read African Agenda 2063. So it becomes a center. It doesn't mean that Asia Pacific ceases to be, but there will be three main centers maybe: the West, the Asia Pacific, and the India. So then we have identity of its own in trading. So if you look at it that way, when Africa and all are trading, what is Sri Lanka's position? We are here located in the strategic, we have the strategic location. So if we develop our ports, we have Colombo as the big port, acting regional logistic hub. We are developing Trincomalee with India, so that as the Eastern Indian Ocean develops, we are also benefiting from it. And we have Hambantota, because Hambantota means there are many ports that have been set up here in the Indian Ocean, by the Chinese, by the Japanese, by others. So if you link up Hambantota with Africa, that's another commercial port. So how do you look at it? Those of us who know civilization and trade look at the long term. Those who don't look at it and ask, what on earth is this port funded by Chinese doing here in Hambantota? It obviously is a military base. So you have to understand how these issues operate. But ports are important. Remember that this part of the world will get control of the ports. With Dubai port that is coming in, world ports, you're taking a large number. Others are also getting it. If Sri Lanka can get a few ports, we'll do that. We have to be in the game. So that's one important issue. Secondly, what about the airlines? Basically, airlines are dominated by the UAE and Qatar. And Qatar and them are also getting into airports. So you can see a new paradigm that is developing. India and Pakistan have already taken over cricket. India, especially with its IPL. MCC no longer is the home of cricket. If you want to know what happens, look at the IPL. then you found Saudis and UAE and Qatar trying to take over football clubs in Europe. So it's a new game that's on. In Asia, we are moving around everywhere. So within that framework, that we look at, does it mean that we reject Indo-Pacific? No, there is interconnectivity between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Look at Islam. It has come from the Middle East and gone all the way to Philippines. I think only the few non-Islam nations are 4. Nepal, Bhutan, India, Sri Lanka. It's spread out that way. If you ask the Ramayana, they'll tell you the story in Vietnam. That's why it's called Indochina. It's gone in there. Take Sri Lanka, our Theravada Buddhism. What started here went into Myanmar, to Thailand, to Laos, to Cambodia, to South Vietnam. We are very much in it. Then the big connections on the Silk Road between China, India. India sent Buddhism across. Chinese came around here. So there is interconnectedness. So then how do we look at it? I think we in Sri Lanka then accept the ASEAN outlook of the Indo-Pacific as 2 distinct oceans. As Ram said, it's a distinct ocean, this is a distinct ocean. The global geopolitics will decide what stands we take, what we do. But we have to ensure one thing, that freedom on navigation and undersea cables prevail in the Indian Ocean. So this is why we must take the initiative now to go ahead. And what is the new emerging order? Last week, while I was free, I jotted down a few points to talk about the new emerging order. Yesterday I tore it up. What has happened in between has made what I am going to say redundant. But it will affect what is going to happen now after the Hamas attack on Israel. You could see politics taking its place. Israel has already formed a unity government. So destroying Hamas is one thing. They can take military action against it. But what's the reaction if you go and destroy Gaza? The whole situation will change in 24 hours. The whole situation will change in 24 hours. That nothing the governments here can control. From here all the way to Indonesia, elsewhere, governments will lose control of the situation. This whole picture, what I say, will change. It's not, I wouldn't envy being involved in those negotiations. What do? One hand, you have a unity government in Israel wanting to strike back. If you go into Gaza, you can, the whole Middle East will on fire, and that will affect all of us here, up to Turkey on one end, up to Philippines on the other side. It will affect Central Asia, including Xinjiang. So in the next few days, we will decide what the options are. I wouldn't like to be in President Biden's shoes. How does he handle it this way? Bad enough with allies on both sides. How do you handle it domestically? When you have to think of the Jewish vote bloc for the next election? And his difficulty of speaking with Congress, it may be easier for him to speak to Hamas than to speak to the Congress leadership. But it is that it's how delicate it is. But on his decisions will depend what happens. So all this that we said today can change tomorrow. So let's hope wise leadership prevails, and that we all, I think a lot of backdoor diplomacy is going on, that all that will succeed, and somehow we can hold the situation. Otherwise, we'll have to meet again to decide what the new order that has emerged. So I don't want to take any more of your time, but I'd like to thank you all and wish you all the best.